Hello everybody, I'm Nora Burrows. Today I want to start a quilt made out of kind of a block exchange project-ish. It wasn't officially a block exchange, but it was kind of the same idea with members of my guild. We made these tree blocks, and so I have a bunch of these tree blocks. Here's one. So I don't know who made this one, but I made this one. These trees may look familiar because I did a video tutorial on how to make these trees. I will link to that video below. So I have a bunch of these tree blocks. I want to put them together. My friend Rebecca, who also has a bunch of tree blocks, she's a member of the guild, she came out with this really cool layout. So I think we're going to do both of our quilts are going to be in this cool layout, which I'll show you in a minute. And then we're going to work on our quilts separately, so we won't really know what each other's look like until the end. Let me show you what I'm thinking, show you some fabrics, and then we'll get to sewing. In addition, I will give you measurements on all of these things that I'm doing so that if you wanted to make the quilt, you can, or you can just follow along with me for fun and kind of watch the process. But let's go take a look at those fabrics. Here is the layout that Rebecca came up with. As you can see, it's like a tree made out of trees, which I think is super cool. It even has that trunk at the bottom. And then what I think I'm gonna do is with these blue fabrics up here, I'm gonna go from kind of the lightest ones at the bottom and then work my way up to the darker ones at the top as the background. So my first step is going to be to start connecting my rows of trees. So I'll connect these two, I'll connect these three, I'll connect these four. And let's take a better look at these fabrics here. So these ones are my lightest ones. This one is very sky-like. I'm not convinced that I'm making wise choices here about my fabric, but I kind of am just going to start, and if I really dislike something, I can always rip it out. But they're very different. Like this one is very geometric. This one is very watercolory. This one is, you know, novelty, floral. We have a plaid back there, and then these ones are both really dark. So because they're so different, I'm just not sure how they're going to work, but we'll find out. First step, sewing the trees together into rows. I've sewn my rows together, but I haven't sewn the rows to the rows, so they're still separated like that, as you can see. And so now I want to start to create my background. Here are my blues over here, and what I've decided is I'd like to add a little bit of green at the bottom, and I am kind of, you know, like grass, obviously. So I'm kind of debating between these two greens. This one, so it'll be right up against this blue, and I'm kind of leaning towards this one. Plus, I think it has some animals in it. Does it or no? Maybe it doesn't have animals in it. But it does look kind of grassy. This one also looks grassy, but it's pretty bright. That second one is pretty bright. So I don't know if that would kind of detract from the quilt. But I feel like this one might blend a little bit too much. So I'm going to go with this. Let me cut some fabric up, and we'll talk about, you know, what to do next. I'm cutting this fabric to go on either side of the trunk, but I want the piece to be continuous. So I cut this piece here. This just happens to be a 4.5 inch strip. But if I were just to cut another 4.5 inches, these kind of stripy things wouldn't match up. So what I'm gonna do is I'll put this piece kind of on top of my yardage of fabric to line up. I think that lines up pretty good. And then I'll put my ruler on top of it and cut my line right against the edge of my existing strip. Then I can remove my existing strip and just go 4.5 inches over and make my second cut. Let's see if they match up. So the trunk will be in the middle. Yeah, and these look pretty good. I have cut 6 strips, 3 on each side, that are each 26.5 inches long. Now, my bottom strip, the green, and then the one right above it, the light blue, are each 3.5 inches wide on both sides. This top blue one is 4.5 inches wide. 4.5 inches by 26.5. Same for that other top blue one. What I'll do next is sew these 3 strips together. So as you can see right here, it comes down a little bit farther than the trunk, but once you take into account these seam allowances, it'll tighten right up. I'll do that on both sides. Sew my 3 strips together, both sides, and then I will sew both sides to my trunk. This is coming along really nicely. I'm very, very happy with how this looks. So let me give you a couple more measurements here. This whole strip here is attached. This is a 3.5 inch by 6.5 inch. This piece here, this one right here, is 6.5 inch wide by 7.5 inches long. This piece is 11.5 long by 3.5 wide. And then this last piece that I've cut here is 11.5 by 7.5. So 11.5 by 7.5. I'm gonna go ahead and sew these two pieces together and then attach them to this long strip. And sew these two pieces together and attach them to the long strip. I'll do the same with the other side. I have all of the background pieces cut, and then I have those bottom 1, 2, 3 rows all sewn into rows. So let me go ahead and quickly tell you the measurements of those. As you can see over here, I made myself little slips of paper so I could remember my sizes. But the other thing I wanted to say is that after this row down here, I started cutting them a little bigger than the official measurements. So if you go by the official measurements and you sew perfectly, then you should be a-okay. But I started making my pieces a little bit longer. I still go by the same width, but I just wanted them to be a little longer so then I can just kind of trim down and I don't have to worry about it too much. But I'll tell you the official measurements of if you are a perfect sewer. This piece here is 6.5 by 16.5. This one is also 16.5, but it's only 4.5 wide. This piece here, 21.5 long by 3.5 wide. This one is also 21.5 long, 3.5 wide. This polka dot one right here is 4.5 wide, 21.5 long. And then this last row at the top, this one is 3.5 wide, 26.5 long. This one here, 4.5 wide, 26.5 long. Very top one, 3.5 wide, 26.5 long. Visually speaking, how am I feeling about this quilt? I'm gonna put another really wide strip at the very top as the same fabric as that top strip. And then at the bottom here, I'll put another strip of green. Now, a couple things. Part of me wishes I had done the whole quilt in these darker fabrics, going all the way down in just dark, because then I think that the middle tree would really pop. So that would have been cool. Or the other thing that I think would be cool is to do the entire quilt in kind of this sky background fabric, this one here. I think if I had done the entire back in that background, that also would have been visually really pleasing. I plan to add a bunch of applique. We'll see, I feel very ambitious about that right now. We'll see how that really all comes out, but I want to do a big moon up in the corner. I want to do stars. I'm thinking about doing some kind of birds sitting on the trees, maybe a little bunny. So we'll see how far I actually get on that. I mean, I think that really I could put all of the pieces that I already have cut out together, add a border, and then I would be fine to be done. But I do think that there's some opportunity for some additional interest here. So let me go ahead and sew all these pieces together. So I'm going to sew the rest of the pieces just like I did these first couple of rows. I'll sew the side pieces together and then attach them to the row. And then once I have all my rows sewn, I'll start connecting those rows together. All my pieces are sewn together. In addition, I added a strip of green to the bottom and a strip of blue to the top. Both of those strips are 6.5 inches by just whatever the width of the quilt was at that point.
I had talked a little bit about appliquing things. I do still want to do that, but I think I'm going to be more minimal about it than I thought. There's a lot going on in this quilt. It's like super busy right now, so I want to be careful of that. So I definitely want to do some stars kind of coming down from the top, trying to maybe make more stars and then less as they go down, and then ending the stars maybe around here. And then maybe doing some kind of animals at the bottom, but I'm not sure about that yet. Next, I'm gonna add a border. I think maybe something kind of brownish is what I'm thinking, but I have to go take a look at some fabrics. I'm trying to get away from, what I call the wedding cake quilts that I make, which are, very symmetrical, very floral, lovely quilts. And though this one is symmetrical, I think that it's a little bit wacky at the same time, so I'm pleased with that. But let me go check out some border fabric. We'll add the borders, and then I'll think about the applique.
My quilt top is done. I'm really happy with it. As you can see, I appliqued those stars up there, these wolves down here, and I put on this awesome border that we'll get a closer look at in a second. I'll also, when I'm done with this quilt, after it's complete, hang it up on the quilt frame so that you can really get a better look. It's a little bit hard to tell here as it's lying on the ground, but I'm really happy with this. I'm gonna go ahead and, right now it is spray basted to the batting. I'm gonna spray baste on the backing next, and then put in a couple pins as well, and then I'm going to hand quilt it using the big stitch method, using pearl cotton thread. So I think that's gonna be really cool. I have never hand quilted anything before, so this will be a first. Hopefully it goes well, but I'm gonna finish basting this, quilt it, and then we'll take a look at it when it's done. Here's a close-up of the border, which I think is really effective. I wasn't so sure about it when I just saw the fabric on my shelf, and I was like, you know what, I'll just give it a try, and I love it. I think the black and the tan, kind of against all these other colors, works really well. And then for my wolves here, I did embroider, you can't really see too well, but I embroidered eyes onto the wolves. The three wolves looking at each other are of the same fabric, and then that wolf howling at the moon is a different fabric. The quilt is done. I love it. Unfortunately, I can't get a full picture of it here, but I'll scan to the top and down to the bottom. I think it's looking really, really good. I did do the big stitch quilting. I am gonna add more big stitch quilting, but I got enough done that I felt like it was finished. And then I'll just keep adding more to it. But the binding is on. All of the applique pieces, the moon, the stars, the wolves, the binding, and the backing are all flannel. So that adds like a nice little extra texture. But I'll get a closer look at some of the fabrics and the big stitch quilting that I did. My only complaint about it is that I wish I had switched this tree with this tree, because all the trees on the outside are like this cream or white color, and this is that cream or white color, and this one is just a little bit more brown, so I do wish that I had switched those two, but I still think it's fine. I mean, that one here is in the lighter tones. I mean, it's not like that blue one there. So I think that when I laid the trees out, I didn't fully look at them as long as I should have. I love the wolves, I love the moon, the stars, I love the applique so much. The brown tree is the trunk, awesome. I am just so happy, and of course, the border along the outside just ties it together perfectly. So let's get a closer look. And I thought you might like to see my little tray of pearl cotton threads. So some of these I just got at Joann's, and then other ones I got at my local quilt shop. And some of these I got, the variegated ones I got at a garage sale. But you can tell the weight. So this one is a 12. So this is the thinnest one. And then I don't have my 5s in here because I just gave up and put them somewhere else. I only have my 8s and my 12s. But you can see on the outside. So that one is a number 8. And I always was confused about thread and the thickness, but if you think about a regular thread that you use in your sewing machine, it's frequently like a 50. And the pearl cotton ones, are 12, 5, 8s. And that's kind of how I remember how the thickness of thread works. The lower number, the thicker the thread, the higher number, the thinner the thread. So here you can kind of see some of the big stitch quilting that I did. And I used different thicknesses of thread depending on kind of what I had You can see some of the stitching there. This was one of my earlier pieces, which was a little bit less consistent. This one was also kind of earlier and less consistent. Let's see if we can find, ooh, I realized I'm missing one on this tree. So what I did was I outlined all the trees, but this one doesn't have it, so I need to go back and do that tree. But that one's a little bit better there. You can see the stitches are a little bit more even. But so I started with the size 12, I started with the size 5. Sorry, I started with the size 5. Let's get a look at these stars. I started with the size 5. That was very thick, challenging to work with, so I just put a little bit of stitching in the middle of each one. So I went to a size 8, which I think is what most people use. And then sometimes I used a size 12 because I just had that on hand. I lost a lot of my tips of my trees, but that's okay. I think when you back up, you can't really see. I mean, that tip is pretty good right there. So is that one. These ones are pretty good. And then here down here, I lose a bunch of that one and that one. So they're not consistent, but that's okay. And then here I stitched kind of just in between the pattern of the moon fabric, which I think worked well. For any of the stitching that I did over the applique, I had to only take one stitch at a time because it was so thick to get through. So most of the stitching that I did, I took, anywhere between 2 and 4 stitches at a time. But for the applique, it was just too thick, so I could only take one at a time. And then the other thing that I did, you can see here, is at the bottom of each strip, I went right across and quilted a line. So I wouldn't do it here on this seam, but whenever a new fabric started, I stitched a line. And that's on both sides of the trees. For my wolf here howling, I think that you can see I did some stitching along the diamond, so there's some stitching here. And some of the other diamonds you can see. And then I did also outline the wolves. I haven't outlined up into the sky yet. I will do that, but I did outline the bottom of the wolf. You can probably see it better maybe here on this wolf. And then I want to outline some of these circles also, just to really tack the wolves down really well. But overall, I'm incredibly happy with this. I love these trees so much. I love that members of my guild made them. I really got to know these trees really well as I was stitching up this quilt. And then here's the binding that I chose, which is kind of similar to the fabric that I used in the wolf. It has kind of these diamond patterns. And then of course this gorgeous border, which I think might be my favorite part of the whole quilt. That and the wolves, I think, are pretty spectacular. I did also think about appliquing a little circle in the left-hand corner of each of the tree blocks to kind of mirror the moon up there. And then I thought how cool it would be that if I did that to applique teeny tiny little wolves at the bottom of each tree. And then I thought that that was just getting a little crazy. But I do think that just doing the circle in the corner of each block could have been really cool. Thanks for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.